Hi, I'm Richard Howell. I'm one of the software engineers here at DPS Telecom, and today I'm going to talk about the CellVoice 4. Now, this is one of our smaller RTU units. It's got 4 alarm inputs on it, and what's interesting about this device is it actually has a cellular modem built into it. Now, that enables a couple interesting things. In particular is the ability to notify over a cellular network. Now, I'm going to go through and show you some configuration on this unit and some of the key features that you can do when you have a modem like this in a unit. Now, we've got a couple different versions of this that are higher capacity and lower capacity, but what I want to show is the ability to send notifications over the cellular network via SMS as well as via voice. All right, so right now we are currently browsed into the CellVoice 4. So we're just at the login screen. So this is just like any other device that we've ever had. If you're used to using our equipment, this will be a very familiar interface. If you've never used our equipment before, I'll go over some of the specific items that this device has. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and log in with the default user, which is admin, and then the password, all lowercase, is DPS Telecom. So this is, again, the default credentials for logging into one of our systems. All right, so now what you'll notice, on the left-hand side here, what I have is all of the monitor or read-only interface elements. So this is gonna be things like viewing the status of your alarms, your relays, things like analog sensors, D-wire sensors, and so on. So the blue interface here is gonna be pretty consistent throughout all of our products. So the CellVoice 4 is designed so that when you use this for the first time, if you have used our products before, it should look familiar. Now, this green menu down here, this is the provisioning. This is where you do all of the things like configuration for the device. When you set up your user permissions, you can prevent a user from having access to the provisioning menu. So we're gonna get into that in just a second. Device access it's things that are critical elements. So for example, the ability to initialize the units, read and write from the configuration, backup, and so on. So these are basically your more administrative type provisioning elements. So we kind of put those in a red menu here just to make them appear a little more important. But the bulk of your configuration and just management and things like that are gonna happen in the green provisioning menu. Okay, so I'm gonna go in here. Now this is pretty much a factory default unit right now. And so you're gonna see that you have the name of the device, the location. The name, by the way, actually shows up at the top of this. So I typically recommend when you name your device, you actually give it the location of the site that it's at. This makes a lot of sense when you have a lot of RTUs out there in the field. When you log into one, you want it to be pretty obvious which piece of equipment you're logged into. You don't want to get confused because you might be sitting in a NOC center or an office far away from these sites. So just kind of keep that in mind. I always recommend you give the name of the device, the location. Okay, so things like contact is basically just gonna be a phone number if you wanted to put some type of administrative phone number in there. It defaults to our phone number, so that's actually DPS Telecom's phone number. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of go over some of the features and things in here. If you have this device being pulled by a TMON system, you'll be setting up the DCP responder settings. So the way this works is a TMON actually sends a request for data to the unit. We call those DCP polls. And so the device is actually responding with the alarming data. That's why we configure the responder settings in the RTU itself. On the TMON side, we actually configure what are called the interrogator settings. So you can kind of see how that works on both sides. So I am gonna enable this. I'm gonna actually check this so that it's being pulled over the LAN or over the network. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I will actually give this a unit ID of 100. Now you don't have to do this, but it makes a lot of sense to just have the last octet of the IP address match the unique ID or the DCP ID of the unit. That just makes it, organizes it a little bit better, so that's kind of nice. Okay, so there are a couple other things in here I'll go over before I save this. You have things like your history file. So any change of states and things like that ever happened in this device are going to be stored in the history file. And then you can obviously go ahead and initialize and erase that right here. So you can do things like voice recordings and things like that. You can actually download the actual configuration of the unit. Wouldn't make a lot of sense here because we are currently in a pretty much defaulted unit. So I'm just gonna go ahead and save that change that I made to the unit ID. Okay, so anytime you save something, it actually does not push that configuration directly to the unit right away. There is a write procedure that you need to go through, and what that does is it applies the configuration to the device. All right, so I'm gonna click device access here, and you'll see that I made a configuration change that not only requires that I write to the unit, but also that I reboot the unit. So that's the DCP ID piece. Whenever you change that, you pretty much need to reboot the unit. So I'm gonna go ahead and click write, and you will see it says your changes were successfully written to the unit. So that's a key piece. We're actually writing information to the unit right now. And then I'm gonna go ahead and perform a reboot. So you guys will actually see this device will go through a reboot cycle. Now, if you were to watch the actual front panel of the unit, let's say you were at a site or you were in a lab and you're directly in front of the unit, you will actually see the lights on the front of it will all blink and kind of dance around a little bit. And that's just to give you an indication that it is rebooting. Okay, and you can see that it's already back. This unit is built on our later gen web interface and software firmware, so it actually reboots pretty quickly. If you're used to something like an 832 or 864, those take a little bit longer to reboot. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just log back in again. And you can see we're back here. And I'm gonna go into the provisioning menu once again. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done some basic configuration. Again, this is primarily if you're gonna be pulling the unit with a master station like a Timon, LNX, Mini, or Slim. So I did wanna have that enabled. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over one of the features that is actually specific to the CellVoice 4, and that is gonna be the SMS notifications. So one of the cool things about this device is because it has a cellular modem, you can actually configure it to send out notifications over that cell. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on the notification section right here. On a default unit, you're gonna notice nothing is configured. So let's go ahead and click this edit button right here. All right, so we're actually gonna configure notifications on both alarms and clears. So this is kind of cool. So if you only want on a notification when it goes into the alarm state, you can do that. Or you can do it when it goes into the clear state only. Typically, notifications you're gonna assign on both alarms and clears because you do wanna know when that particular event clears itself. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. There are some special cases where you don't care about when it clears. All right, so you can send an email just like most of our equipment out there. You can send an SNMP trap. That's another way to northbound information from this device. But some of the ones that are a little bit more specific to the CellVoice 4 is the ability to send voice and SMS. So I'm just gonna go ahead and send an SMS message. So I'm gonna save this right here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put the phone number that we're gonna send this to. So this one will actually be a cell phone number. Okay, so now because it's not an email, I'm not worried about configuring the email gateway. So you can do like SMS to email type things. I'm not worried about that. And I'm not worried about setting up the backup mode. This is kind of cool if you do want the cellular network to be your backup. And you can set it so that it only sends notifications through here if it is in that backup mode. Okay, so all of our notifications can be scheduled. So what this basically means is I can select which days of the week I want to notify on. So you've kind of got two ways to fill this in. So I'm actually going to fill in no weekends essentially, but I'm going to do all day during that time. So for example, basically 12 in the morning to 11:59 at night. So again, if you did want to do after hours, you could. So an example of that would be something like 12 a.m. to say 8 a.m. and then from 6 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. would be the only times you would notify. So if you only wanted the system to be an after hours notifier, you could do something like that. For the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to keep these 24 hours throughout the day, but only on weekdays. Okay, so cool. So we actually went ahead and finished configuring that one notification. And then you can see here, you actually can configure up to 8 notifications locally in the CellVoice 4. If you need more capacity or something like that, then you're gonna start looking at something like a TMON management system. But for just the cell voice itself, it does have the ability to send 8 notifications within its own device. So that is pretty cool. Okay, now just like before, I'm gonna go ahead and have to write this configuration change. Now you'll notice I don't have to reboot the system for this particular change. So we actually didn't change anything that required a reboot, so that's a little bit easier. Okay, cool, and there we go. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send a test notification out just to make sure that my notifications are working. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this test button, and I'll go ahead and hit OK. So it's basically saying, look at the notification failed status just to make sure that your notification went through. I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. That's basically if you're turning up this device for the first time and you wanna make sure your modem and things are working, you can look at the system alarms on the device and it will give you an idea of modem not detected. Maybe you might not have coverage or something like that. So those are things you just wanna make sure because you are dealing with a cell network now, not just a LAN connection. Okay, cool. So now it went ahead and sent a notification to the cell. So you can go ahead and review that and see what that notification looked like. Okay, now I'm gonna go over just some basic Ethernet configuration. If I actually click on this Ethernet setting right here, you can actually see this device is currently defaulted. It's on a 192.168.100 address. This is the address of the device that's physically connected to LAN, so that's what we're looking at here. I'm gonna go ahead and give this guy a gateway because right now it doesn't have the gateway that I'm using. And I'm gonna go ahead and save that. All right, now because I'm on the same subnet mask, that's how I'm able to access the unit, but I'm gonna go ahead and set that there. You can go ahead and set the DNS server too. I'm not too worried about that because I'm not hitting any host names or anything like that for anything that we're doing. But if you did have something like an email server, it would make sense to obviously give you a DNS that would access that server. All right, now just like before, this is a write that also requires a reboot. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just reboot the unit now. And once this reboots and comes back up, this device will be pretty much ready to go and I can start assigning notifications to it, configuring alarm restrictions and things like that. And there you go. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the CellVoice 4 interface. You'll find that it does have some pretty cool features specific to it, especially now that it has that cell modem in it. But you'll also find that it has a lot of the same core features of our other products in our product lines. So I hope you learned a lot. And as always, like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.